Kenzie, with the 40-odd minutes left, do you wish to inquire into outcome 3 and 4, or do you want the whole time on outcome 3?
I'm doing my best to get through what we've got.
All right, so I've just said that because if you think it's going to be longer, we'll let outcome 4 go, but if you think you'll get to them...
Well, are we going to have another day to get to them?
Not with me,
no.
no.
So I'll keep them here and see how I go.
This is the final.
Thank you so much, Chair. Now, I wanted to ask some questions on the Local Government Roads to Recovery program. So there's less than a week till the new financial... So that is outcome 4, is it? No, because this is specifically going to local governments. It's not going to be asking about projects.
Okay, sorry, I apologise.
I'm well aware what's in outcome 1 and what's in outcome 3. So we've nearly got, obviously, the financial year's coming. When will the government release the funding guidelines for councils to consider the Roads to Recovery program 24-29 period, please? Ms Hall, have you got the answers to my question?
Hello, Senator. Jessica Hall, Deputy Secretary Infrastructure. So we did think that this would be under outcome 1, and our person has got COVID, so she's not here, but we will do our best to answer some questions for you.
They're quite high level.
So just bear with us for a second. So the Roads to Recovery guidelines, I'll just bring up the information. My understanding is that the new funding period will actually commence on the 1st of July 2024, and the guidelines have actually been approved.
They've been. This is why we're asking this question, because they're open in a week.
Yes.
Yes.
And the guidelines.
When will the guidelines be released? They've been approved.
I believe they have been released.
Here we go. Here we go. Sticky note.
They are now available on the Federal Register of Legislation, and we can table that for you.
Wonderful. Tick. Breaking news from Estimates 7:15 tonight. So under the current Roads to Recovery programs, the guidelines require Council to match the ANAO funding. Yes?
Not necessarily.
Dollar for dollar?
No, I think they have to make a contribution, Senator. I don't think they necessarily had to match them, but I will get a copy of the guidelines for you. Can
we actually check that it is? My understanding is that that period between 2019-2024 is that councils do have to match the funding. And my question for the new guidelines, which I'm looking forward to receiving, will require councils to match funding on the same dollar for dollar. But you're saying it's a contribution.
My understanding is it's a contribution, and I don't think we actually changed those requirements. But let me just check.
Okay. Should just bring your name tag.
Sorry. Our poor Assistant Secretary is extremely ill with COVID at the moment.
Yeah. We wish them a speedy recovery.
So, Anita Langford, First Assistant Secretary, Road and Vehicle Safety Division. I've just been advised that there is no change to the own source contribution requirements.
So it is still dollar for dollar?
No, it's an own source.
It's own source.
Yep.
Explain own source.
So as far as I'm aware, they are asked to make a contribution to the funding.
Yep.
It does not have to be dollar for dollar. It would be nice if it was.
What consultation has the department undertaken with local government sector on the new guidelines?
So when the government announced that it was making changes post the infrastructure review and the recommendations that came out, we had extensive consultations. So we went out and we did a number of surveys with councils, plus we also wrote to councils, I believe, and we sought significant feedback in regards to what changes they would like to see. Most of the requirements were around administrative changes, and they were all taken into consideration in the draft of the new guidelines.
Sorry, Ms Hall, thank you to my wonderful staff slaving away down in my office, but Part 3, 3.1, own source roads expenditure obligation, says subject to 3.2, for each financial year in which a funding recipient receives, spends or retains any amount of road to recovery payment, the funding recipient must spend on the construction and or maintenance of roads an amount of own source funds, which I'm assuming is funds sourced from their own bank account, equal to or greater than the reference amount applicable to the funding recipient. Isn't that what the actual guidelines say?
So the own source expenditure is not a co-contribution to the projects, though. It's a part of the funding conditions.
So in order to, in part of the funding conditions, let me maybe rephrase it from co-contribution. Part of the funding condition is that the local government has to put in to the project more broadly an amount of their own funds equal to or greater than what the Commonwealth is providing as part of the R2R program.
Or a
Would that better describe the arrangement?
It would be a predetermined amount, yes.
Equal to or more than?
It's in it.
And that remains unchanged?
That remains unchanged, yes.
Right. Did local governments raise concerns with the department about their ability, particularly for regional councils, and this is a very popular program in the regions, to be able to match the additional funding promised? Was that part of your consultation?
I'll have to take that on notice, Senator. I'm not aware of any of those sorts of issues.
Well, I'm aware of some press. You're not aware, Ms Hall? Are you, Ms Langford, are you aware?
No, not aware of any specific.
But are you concerned that regional councils said they're having difficulty with that particular clause within the funding conditions of the previous guidelines?
I'm not aware of them raising those concerns, and I don't, as I said, it's no different to what we have had previously under all of the previous guidelines that we've had.
All right, I'm sure they'll let you all know tomorrow morning.
Absolutely.
Mayors, get your email account open. So the government, you've increased the funding. You've announced the increase in funding will be phased in. What is the increase in roads to recovery funding by percentage over 24, 25, across to 29, compared with funding under 2019 to 24? What is the increase?
If you want it in percentage, I'll have to take that on notice, but what I can tell you is the funding amounts. So for 24-25, the budget is $650 million. For 25-26, it's $800 million. For 26-27, it's $950 million. And from 27-28 onwards, it will be $1 billion.
Every year?
Sorry?
Every year?
Every year. And
how does that compare with the 19?
So by 27-28, it's a doubling of funding.
Wow.
No, I read the press release.
Yeah, so...
what I'm trying to understand is that the increase in funding that you've put on the table is actually increasing the issue for local councils. So I will go back and do the maths myself on that. How has the government determined the allocations to individual councils for additional road to recovery funding that was announced in that period?
So in regards to the changes around how they've and any changes that they have
Which
made,
are all in percentages. Anyway, keep going. How was that determined?
I'll just see if Ms Langford has the information there.
Not in front of me.
Big
So
file.
the main changes that were actually made in regards to the funding allocation was to ensure that every council received a doubling of the funding by 27-28. So there were no changes in the allocation. The only difference is that there was a drought component, if you remember.
Yep, I do.
That program comes to an end, and it was always determined to come to an end under the former government, so that allocation is not included. That's the only difference.
Okay. On the November 21st, Minister King told Radio 5AA in Adelaide every single council in South Australia will be having their roads to recovery money doubled.
That's right.
Is that correct?
That's correct, Senator.
That is correct.
Yep.
Over that money that they're receiving right now.
That's right, excluding the drought community funding, because obviously we have to take that out because it's no longer a program, and then all of the councils will have their funding doubled by that 27-28
When you
program.
compare it to the 19 to 24
That's right.
figures.
That's right.
So the government gazetted the funding allocations period on the 14th of May. When compared with the previous funding roll, the country's richest councils, like the City of Sydney, Melbourne, etc., Brisbane City Council, are all receiving 76% funding increases over 5 years. Is that correct?
I'd have to take that on notice, Senator. The program and the funding did not change from the allocation that was 2019 to 2024. It was just, everything was just doubled. So I'll have to take that on notice and come back to you.
So you don't have
from
a council by council?
I don't have a council by council.
Ms Langford, do you have council by council?
Not council by council.
I've got a lot of questions on that.
Sorry, as we said, we
It's all
thought
good.
this was outcome one.
No, well, it was the local council aspect of it, not
Yep.
the road aspect of it. So my next series of questions goes to the Growing Regions program.
Just get the right people on the table. Senator, 1 second.
Right. Okay, so at last estimates, the department was unable to answer whether the $93 million of unallocated, unspent round one funding would be made available to fund round two applications or whether it would be returned to consolidated revenue. Over the past month, have you been able to find an answer to that question?
So that would be a decision of government, Senator.
And government hasn't made that decision?
Not to date.
So is the money still sitting with the department?
Yes.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, it is. And you have received no direction from the Minister on where that money's going?
Senator.
What is happening with the applications?
For round,
Is there another round that's been announced?
so no, there has not been round two announced.
Has the Minister been thinking about round
So
two?
we have been through a process of taking the lessons from round one and thinking about how we would apply that to round two.
Sorry, just say the first 3 words again.
So we have been through a process of assessing the lessons out of round one and thinking how we would apply that to round two for the design settings.
And so when are you planning to send up to the Minister those learnings from round one?
I would expect, there are ongoing discussions that we're having,
Of
but I
course.
expect we would be providing advice shortly around round two.
Right. And what are some of those lessons?
So
You just need to be careful that that doesn't go to the content of our
Of
advice to
course,
the
I have
Minister,
every confidence in your officers, Mr McKay.
Senator. As do I, Senator.
So, Senator, it's the usual process to review how each program round is run. We assess each step of the process from the design through the assessment through to the decision. And in this case, I think again, I wouldn't. It's speculative at this point as to how we draw those lessons and what that means for the design settings, but just that it's consideration that we're giving.
What
at this
role
stage.
is the ANAO report into this program playing in those lessons and learnings?
It's a significant. We definitely take the advice from the ANAO and build that in.
Sorry, say that again.
We will be taking the advice from ANAO and building that into our considerations.
Has
for
that
round
been
two.
part of your current process?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Because, as you know, the ANAO released a very critical report on the design of the Growing Region program, and on page 19 the report indicates applications for expressions of interest were intended to open in May 23 but were actually not opened until July 23. What was the reason for that delay?
Dr Jenny Hood, Assistant Secretary, Regional Programs. The ANAO report does outline the delays that were associated, especially with the decision and appointment, for lack of a better word, engagement of a grants hub to assist with this program.
The grants hub.
And just, Senator, I would note that the ANAO did find that the department's design was largely effective.
Yeah, I'm asking why sometimes the ANAO, for all its brilliance, may actually miss some points that the department has been quite rigorous about. So I'm asking, does the ANAO's assessment of the delay reflect your own view of why the expression of interest was delayed opening? Is the ANAO's description of why that was delayed correct?
It is my assessment that ANAO did a very thorough investigation and that...
And I notice you're choosing your words very, very carefully, which is very, very good of you. However, still not answering my question. Mr McKay.
You interrupted the answer, to be fair.
Well, to be fair, I'm on very limited time in an estimates where I wanted a whole day. So, Mr McKay, is the ANAO correct in its assessment and description of why the expression of interest was delayed? Yes or no?
Senator, I don't have the ANAO report in front of me.
I'm sure you will have intimate knowledge of that report.
You have the text in front of you. If you read it out, we can respond to the question.
Mr Betts, it's on page 19. These officers will have already given evidence that they've been using the ANAO report's findings to assist them in understanding the lessons and learning so they can develop round two. It is a very sensible question for me to ask, do your officers agree with the ANAO's assessment on why the EOI was delayed? It's not a hard question. You either do or you don't.
So, Senator, I think I would like a chance to go back and reflect on the language. I'm not sure ANAO characterised it as a delay, rather stepping through the processes that were involved in the EOI. Absolutely, we'll be looking at that EOI first stage assessment as part of round two and whether or not there's any modifications we can make.
Yeah, I'm less interested in the ANAO's language. There was a delay of when this was supposed to open. They've come to a view of why that was. And I'm asking the department whether you agree with their assessment of that. That's all I'm asking. It actually wasn't meant to be a gotcha question, but here we are. Yeah, thank you. That'd be great. The ANAO report also discloses that Minister King committed to provide an opportunity for stakeholders, such as local governments, to provide feedback on draft grant opportunity guidelines. The report goes on to state in paragraph 2.31, while the consultations were planned to include an opportunity for stakeholders to provide feedback on the grant opportunity guidelines, draft program guidelines were not made available to stakeholders prior to or during the consultation process and sessions. Infrastructure advised the ANAO on March 24 that at the time of the stakeholder engagement roundtables were held in March 23, approved program guidelines had not been received from the Minister's office. What was the delay in the Minister responding to the draft guidelines?
I'm not sure that's a question that we can answer from the department's end, Senator.
You have weekly meetings, Mr Betts. We have discussed when the Minister came into power, there was like a stack of briefs that were struggling to get out at the door. There's a frustration. The department sends them up in a timely manner. I appreciate that. What was the delay in this case?
You mean why did it take as long as it took?
Yeah.
That's entirely a matter for the Minister to determine how long it takes her to approve the guidelines. It's entirely within her discretion to take as long as she chooses.
Of course. So there's no reason that you can think of that she delayed that?
It was an important program, and I'm sure she wanted to satisfy herself that following adverse ANAO reports on previous programs that this one was rigorous.
Yeah, I'm sure. But I'm sure the department would have done that work already, so she could have confidence. Minister, do you know why Minister King delayed getting this brief out the door?
Oh, not specifically, Senator Mackenzie, but I do know the Minister is very thorough and professional, and as the Secretary said, it is an important program, and the ANAO do take these matters seriously, as does the Minister.
On what dates did the department submit the draft guidelines to the Minister for consideration?
I think we do have that information.
Good. You knew that was coming.
Just while the official officers are looking, Senator Mackenzie, do you think you'll get to outcome 4, or do you have a lot more on outcome 3?
I hope so.
Well, I would just ask, if you think you can, it would be just a decent thing if you know you're not going to let the officers go rather than sit them here. I do hope you do get to outcome 4, because I'll be bitterly disappointed if we've got a lot of people sitting here for no reason at all. Your call, Senator Mackenzie, because I'm getting quite fed up of wasting taxpayers' funds and the resources of having hour after hour of officers sitting in Senate estimate rooms and they're not even being called. You have the call, Senator Mackenzie.
Ms Hood, do you have the answer?
Yes, so were you after the final guidelines that were in when they were approved by the Minister?
No.
The draft?
Not yet. Hold that date. I want to know when you sent the draft guidelines up that may or may not have been delayed.
The draft round 1 guidelines were sent to the Minister on the 12th of January 2023.
Right. This is correct. Yes. 1st of January. And
12th of January.
What dates did the department follow up prior to the stakeholder consultation sessions that you held?
With the Minister's office?
Yes.
I don't have that information in front of me. I would have to take that on notice.
Okay, I would like that. The ANAO report details the department provided advice to the Minister that she should deliver round 6 of the Building Better Regions program. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Take that on notice.
Take that on notice. That was before our time, Senator.
Well, it'll be in the report. But this was a program where applications had been submitted, they had been assessed. It was all tickety-boo waiting to go. The report actually stated that infrastructure raised concerns regarding the impact on grant recipients and on stakeholder expectations. Infrastructure, as in the department, also included advice on how ceasing BBRF would impact applicants who submitted funding applications for projects, including economic cost of delays to project commencement, opportunity cost of resource and time spent by applicants. Anyone that's been involved in anywhere near that program over its 5 and a bit rounds knows how important this is and how much time and money is spent in developing those applications. What reasons did the Minister provide for ignoring the recommendations of the department that BBRF round 6 projects should be delivered?
I think we should check the advice that the department provided. My understanding was that the department gave advice to the Minister about the pros and cons of proceeding with BBRF round 6, but acknowledged that it was entirely in her discretion whether she should proceed or not least in the light of adverse ANAO findings on the previous 2 rounds.
It's all on the
you
public
put a lot of
record,
emphasis on the
Mr. Betts.
ANAO. And
It's all
the
on
minister
public
takes it.
record, but this minister does have form. If you recall an ANAO report, I think it was 2014, about her regional programs. So in the advice and options that you sent up to the minister was one of those that that a new ministerial panel be formed to actually re-examine, in the light of a new government being elected, and go over the BBRF projects?
I'd have to take that on notice, Senator.
I can't remember, Mr. McKay.
I think it's before my time.
It is
Senator.
before his time.
Mr. Betts? This is an ANAO report
Well, you're
that you're actually
conflating
doing
BBRF and
lessons
growing
and learnings
regions.
on, at probably having weekly meetings, poring over it.
Senator,
How do we change our practices?
I think your question was about what the advice at that time said. So that's a couple of years ago.
Yes, it is a couple of years.
And so you don't know?
I would have to take it on notice.
We're taking it
as
on
I
notice.
said, before my time in the role, Senator.
I appreciate that. The ANAO reports the department recommended that the minister agree to engage a panel to consider full project applications. This recommendation was rejected in favour of the minister's preference for a panel of parliamentarians at a first stage of assessment.
So I think,
Is that correct?
I think we might be talking about two separate things. There was a ministerial panel that was part of the design of the Building Better Regions Fund.
Yes.
The multi-party parliamentary panel that you're referring to was a feature of the design
Yes.
of the growing regions,
Which the
round
ANAO
one.
is critical of.
But I think your question, unless I misunderstood it, in which case I apologise, was implying that the parliamentary panel was part of the BBRF Round 6 advice.
No.
Right.
No. I'm asking, is part of your advice to have a parliamentary panel? Or was it the minister's decision to have the parliamentary panel as part of the new program, of her program?
All decisions about the features of the program are decisions of the minister.
So was this one of the options you put forward?
Again, sorry, before my time, Senator, but I believe we did put up advice in relation to a multi-party panel.
A multi-party panel. Okay, excellent. What reasons did the minister give to justify the establishment of the parliamentary panel? She just ticked that box.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
That's my recollection.
The ANAO has been critical of the department not communicating its concerns and identified risks to the minister. Identified risks to the minister about the proposed parliamentary panel. Did the department provide risks? A bit of a, if you do it, here are the options, here are the risks. Was that part of the brief?
Yes, it was part of the brief, and I think that some of those were captured in the ANAO report as well.
They were. So you did advise the minister of risks involved with her proposed multi-party parliamentary panel?
Yes, we did.
Yes. Did you do that in the written brief or orally?
That one was written, I believe.
That was? Okay. The ANAO also found the extraordinary practice of the minister receiving but not signing briefs. The report says, paragraph 259, while written advice was prepared by infrastructure and provided to the minister, some of the advice was not approved or signed, and some key decisions were made through emails or via meetings. On how many occasions has the department provided briefs to the minister which have never been responded to, agreed, disagreed with the recommendations provided?
Across all subject matter areas?
Well, she's the minister.
I'm asking a clarification question.
Yes.
Okay, we'll take that on notice.
Has it improved, Mr Betts, over time?
I don't see it as a problem. I mean, it's up to the minister whether she responds to briefs, and it's up to the minister how she responds to briefs, including through emails, which create a paper trail recording our decision.
Well, it is a problem when you're a minister that's regulating the safety, for instance, of our airline sector, when you are responsible for billions of dollars of taxpayers' money, it actually is a problem whether you bother to sign the briefs or not, because the process of our government and our governance requires not just a chief of staff yelling down the phone at somebody or shooting off an email here or a side corridor over there. There are reasons our democracy operates this way.
Yes,
and the Prime Minister promised a cabinet, an old-fashioned cabinet process, and it sounds to me, and according to the ANAO report, in this case, it didn't happen. And I'm wanting to understand whether this is endemic or a one-off out of this minister. That's all I'm trying to find out. What action is the department taking to ensure you mitigate against the own risks, that all future directions from the minister and her staff are promptly recorded, acknowledged and signed off? Have you had to instigate some processes within the department to actually ensure that you're recording everything appropriately?
No, I haven't, because we are recording everything appropriately. It's not a problem that we encounter on a systemic basis with the Minister's office. So many of the briefs that we put up, for instance, are simply noting briefs or for information briefs, which don't require the creation of a written record necessarily. But most of the briefs that we put up that require decisions are returned generally in a timely fashion with the relevant paperwork completed, so it's not a systemic issue.
But so why does the ANAO have an issue with it if you don't?
The ANAO, from what you've just read out, documented that in a few cases some briefs weren't countersigned. I haven't got that in front of me, and it wasn't something that was subject to any material recommendations from the ANAO that would cause us to change our procedures.
So no procedures have been changed in response to the ANAO report?
Other than through the review, which is currently underway to set us up for Growing Regions Round 2, which will draw on lessons from the ANAO review and our own observations and those of the Minister.
When will your review be finished?
It's underway at the moment.
When will it be finished?
That's soon.
Yeah, shortly. I suspect we're concluding that in the next few weeks.
Will that be done before the ANAO's next piece of work into this?
I would imagine so, yes, Senator.
Okay. Just in terms of assessing applications that were initially received under Growing Regions, how many were received initially?
So when you say initially, Senator, do you mean the expression of interest stage?
Sorry,
so that was
I wasn't clear.
650 expressions of interest were submitted.
And how many were approved by the department to be presented to that multi-party panel for review?
So 525 of the 650 expressions of interest were eligible and
for funding,
eligible
to
be considered under the
This is all sounding
guidelines.
very familiar.
And following the consideration of the panel, 443 applicants were invited to submit the full application.
Got you. So how many were not eligible or rejected? So we just subtract that? There's no...
125 from the expressions of interest submitted down to those that were eligible.
Yep.
Of the 443, well, so then we go from 525 eligible down to 443, and we received 386 applications.
And just noting with the 443, we did have one withdrawal.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Perfect. We've got all the numbers. Did you support all the parliamentary panel's recommendation, or were some projects excluded along the way, on your advice?
No, we invited all applications that were deemed by the panel or recommended by the panel to us.
And that's the 443?
Yes,
Yep.
got it. It's understood that during consultation stages about the program, stakeholders requested application windows not go over the Christmas New Year period. The original guidelines released by the Minister proposed full applications would be due in December 23 prior to Christmas. Is that correct?
In the original guidelines, I would have to double check, but I think that is...
That sounds correct, Senator,
Yeah.
but we'll correct it if it's not.
So why was that decision made to change the applications mid-program to have the full applications over the New Year holiday period and close in the middle of January? Pretty sure Canberra shuts down
Yeah,
Go.
So we did experience some delays. We did receive a large number of applications for the program. We also reopened the applications for ELYs because it was identified that some applicants had made errors in their application, and we wanted to give them the opportunity to correct that so that they.
And did anyone complain about the time frame or not, or ask for extensions? I should say?
Yes, we did receive some extensions because, from memory, we also had a rather large tropical cyclone happening in January, and I know there were a number of extensions approved based on extenuating circumstances.
Just on notice, I'd like to know how many applicants withdrew as a result of the 15 January application closing date.
Senator, I don't think we would hold that information.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we can certainly do the first part.
Yeah, I can give you the answer to that now.
Yeah,
there was 12 extensions approved.
Okay, thank you.
But reasons for withdrawal, I don't think we would hold.
No, okay. So what date did you gave the brief to the Minister in January? Did we get the actual date of the, with your full assessment of the full applications, of the successful and unsuccessful applications following that full process? When did that go up?
The department provided that brief on the 6th of May.
6th of May?
With the final recommendations to the Minister.
So we made people submit it on the 15th, the full application, on the 15th of January, but we gave a few exceptions. Is this correct? And then we don't send the brief up. So February, March, April, we send the brief up on the 6th of May.
So in between that time, the Business Grants Hub was conducting an assessment of the full applications. That was then provided to the department, who undertook a further assessment, and then the recommendation was made to the Minister.
So at any point did the Minister express concerns regarding the mix and geographic spread of the projects that were recommended as successful?
Not to my knowledge, Senator, no.
Did her office?
No.
So from the opening of the EIO process to the announcement of the successful grants, do we know what period of time that is? In days or months or weeks?
So Stage 1 EOIs opened... Sorry?
I was going to say guidelines released. From when guidelines were released, it's just over 12 months.
12 months?
EOIs opened in July, so that would be...
And then we're announcing... The brief goes up to the Minister on the 6th of May, and then I'm assuming... How long before she announced the successful projects?
She announced successful projects on the 16th of May.
Okay. Wow, that's really quick, things considering. Just got some questions about the multi-party panel. Your department has much more experience than most in administering grant programs, by far and away. Have there been any grant program evaluations undertaken by the department which have recommended appointing a panel of parliamentarians to assist projects?
I have to take that on notice, Senator.
So who were the members of this multi-party parliamentary panel?
Yes, I do have that listed. Yeah, can you do it?
Yeah, sure. The panels were Ms Lisa Chesters, Senator Karen Grogan, Senator Deborah O'Neill, Dr Helen Haynes, the Honourable Mark Coulton and Ms Bridget Archer.
Okay. So what role did the department have in identifying, recommending and appointing members of the panel?
No role, Senator.
No role? This is purely the Minister's decision?
Correct.
But you had sent a brief up saying one of the options you could do is a parliamentary panel? Yes. With no recommendations of what the construction of that panel should look like?
Certainly it wouldn't have identified members of the panel.
No, but how it might work.
I would need to check that.
Could you check that? Were panel members required to sign confidentiality or non-disclosure agreements?
They were required to sign a conflict of interest. They were not required to sign a non-disclosure agreement, NDA, sorry, whatever.
Okay, so there was nothing that would preclude them, or they weren't given any advice that would preclude them from speaking about their work on this panel?
I would need to double check that.
In addition to the conflict of interest paperwork, that was signed, there was a broader probity briefing provided to the panel.
Yes.
And Dr. Hood might have information with us on what that probity briefing covered.
Yeah, from memory, it did cover how the panel members should talk about their work just to protect the probity of the process.
And what did that mean? Could they talk about their work outside of the panel?
We would need to confirm that, I think, Senator. Just go back to that probity briefing and double check.
Yes. And I'd probably like you to give me a copy of that probity assessment. We can do it the easy way or the hard way, but yeah.
I think that's reasonable. We'll take that on notice.
Thank you, because, we work with people that have signed it. How many meetings were there of the parliamentary panel and on what dates?
Yes, so there were 5 meetings, and I apologise. In the last estimates I said 4 because I missed an early one.
Okay, on the list of
So meeting 1 was held on the 4th of July.
sins, that is not high.
Sorry, excuse me. So meeting 1 was held on the 4th of July 2023. Meeting 2 was held on the 13th of July 2023. Meeting 3 was held on the 10th of August 2023. Meeting 4 was held online on the 6th of September 2023, and meeting 5 was held on the 13th of November 2023.
So on notice, because I know we're short of time, could you please list the attendees of those meetings, and not just the parliamentary members, because I'm sure there'll be staff. And on time, I'm sure that you can do that on notice.
We did take that on notice at the last hearing, Senator.
Yes. So I'm looking forward to receiving that answer. So the work of the panel members was completed on the last meeting. Were they then released from their duties?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Did any of the members of the parliamentary panel express concerns to the minister, the department, regarding the process that they were asked to participate in?
Senator, I wouldn't characterise it as concerns, but certainly there was a feedback process as part of that lessons learnt piece that we were talking about.
So did you get feedback?
Earlier. Yes.
From all panel members?
I don't believe... Well, verbally, yes. I think all panel members were given the opportunity to provide feedback.
So how would you describe that feedback?
Constructive.
If it's not concerning?
No, constructive. I think all panel members were committed to make sure that the process was as robust as possible going forward, noting that this was a new concept that we were really pioneering for the first time through.
So you would describe the feedback as positive?
Constructive.
Was the word Ms. Chappell used.
Of course, very careful words. Officers, are you going to use the same panel members for your Thriving Suburbs program?
That'll be a decision for the minister.
But you don't have any concerns with how the members of the panel conducted themselves?
I think they were appointed by the minister, Senator, so that's a decision for her.
Okay. I think we can go to outcome 4.
Okay.
I'll put the rest on notice.
So we have 5 minutes remaining, and we will be finishing at 8 o'clock on the dot. So thank you very much, officers, for outcome 3.
Is it setting the standard report, Chair, that you were talking about earlier in your remarks?
I absolutely do every time.
I was just checking. Okay.
I'm struggling to try and enforce it, but yep, that's what I'm trying to do over the last couple of years.
Thank you, officers. Can you outline exactly what the $21.2 million to support the replacement of port infrastructure and improve water security will deliver for a territory? Sorry, I'm looking Christmas Island.
Thank you, Senator. Sarah Vanderbroek, First Assistant Secretary, Territories Division. That was the measure in the recent budget, the 22.5 million overall, 21.2 million for capital works.
Yep.
That's for 3 projects.
Mm-hmm.
One is to complete the Summit to Drumsite main water replacement on Christmas Island.
Mm-hmm.
The other is the balance of funding to replace the tower crane on Christmas Island. And the third one is to replace the freight transfer barge for the Cocos-Keeling Islands.
Is this in partnership with any other department or being funded entirely from the Department of Infrastructure?
It's entirely from the Department of Infrastructure.
Bravo. Why are these necessary?
The water main is a project to replace leaking water pipes. A lot of the potable drinking water is being lost through currently leaking pipes, so they're being replaced. The crane is past its useful life. It's still operational but at risk of failure, so it needs to be replaced in case something happens to it. And the barge for Cocos-Keeling Islands was surveyed and found to need replacing.
Okay. How old's the crane?
I don't have that information with me.
Maybe on notice.
Yes.
How long have they been operating with this crane? I just wanted an update on the progress of implementing the Joint Standing Committee on the National Capital and External Territories report into Norfolk Island governance.
Certainly the government response was released to that, and we have formed
Sorry, when was it released? Oh, to that. Sorry, I got excited. I thought you said today.
Oh, no, sorry, no. The government response to the report was released.
I didn't read it.
That was in April that was released. And we have formed a governance committee comprising the administrator of the island, an officer from our department, someone from Queensland Premier's Department, and 3 locally elected community representatives. So the 6 of us have been meeting regularly since October last year to work through the details of the new governance model.
Okay, so you've set up the governance committee?
We have.
Okay, we're in June. So do you think you'll be able to meet the December 24 timeline that was stipulated in the recommendations?
It depends on how complex the model is. If it can be implemented by way of an ordinance, it's possible that we'll meet December. It will still be very tight. If primary legislation is required, we won't be able to have that done by December. There will need to be another arrangement in place in the interim.
And how many people, was it compulsory voting for the 3 representatives?
No.
So how many people voted in this
And it is
process?
7:59, so I will say that we'll make this the last question, so thank you.
1,129 formal ballots were made, Senator.
And what's the population of the island?
2,100.
It's about 56% maybe. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, officers, Secretary, Minister.
Right, it being 8 o'clock,